Hello and welcome to Bespoke Unit. I'm CP and in this video I'm reviewing another classic fragrance. It's Givenchy Gentleman. As with every fragrance review, I'll be conducting it with the Bespoke Unit Fragrance Formula, a quantifiable review matrix that you can use at home. If you look in the description, you will see a link which will take you to a guide. It teaches you how to use it and provides you with blank PDF versions. Givenchy Gentleman is a classic that is often overlooked by more popular fragrances of its period. It was released in 1974 and the nose behind it was Paul Léger. It's a woody aromatic fragrance, and in this case an eau de toilette. It was recently honoured with a flanker called Gentleman Only. However, I wanted to take a look at the original. It has been reformulated a number of times, so the batch code on this one is 9K01. And it was released, I believe, this one in 2020. Well, let's jump in and give it a sample with this cap. There we go. So 2 sprays on the back of hand. Just gonna let that evaporate for a second and cook off because it opens up with quite a blast. Here I already have some notes from some previous samples and I'm gonna compare them as I go through each dry down. So, kapow! This fragrance opens up with a blast of spiciness. In this case, it's cinnamon. But the cinnamon isn't overly offensive because it's softened thanks to a hint of honey. This nice oozy sweetness that is also accompanied by some rose that adds a slight floral aspect to the head. The cinnamon eventually fades, although it stays present through to the heart. And here we're greeted by patchouli. Patchouli is going to dominate the heart, but it's also going to transition well into the base and it's going to be present throughout the rest of the experience of this fragrance. It is accompanied by some sweet orris root that adds this floral texture that's reminiscent of perhaps Parma violets. And there's a hint of jasmine, although it is very, very slight. The heart is probably one of the most overlooked aspects of this fragrance. The most resonating characteristic of it is the patchouli. Outside of that, the orris root, while it is pleasant, while it is sweet, it doesn't really offer much. It's the base where this fragrance is really going to shine and show off its true identity. So we still have the patchouli that is going to still have an earthy presence throughout the base, but you also have a hint of vetiver that adds a kind of green characteristic to it. You also have a touch of vanilla. The vanilla offering a hint of sweet softness, which is going to be well needed because this base is dominated by civet. Civet is an intriguing note that is very rare to find today. Indeed, it was originally harvested from the musk sacs of a cat-like creature. These days, civetone is going to be the synthetic alternative. It is quite infamous because it has what would be described as an offensive smell to it. In high doses, it is reminiscent of fecal matter, or some people say baby vomit. However, when used carefully in a fragrance, it offers an ambery, leathery note that adds a sweet floral character as well. And in this case, it works beautifully. The civet offers a distinctive muskiness that when combined with the vanilla and the vetiver also creates a floral accord. It's quite sweet, but it's not cloying at all. It's very alluring. And when paired with additional oak moss, which adds a hint of green and earthiness as well, you have a very distinctive musky base that shines with an ambery hue. The life cycle of this fragrance is quite classic. Given that it's from the 1970s, you can expect a relatively conventional dry down. Nevertheless, it is very well composed, and although the heart is pleasant enough but nothing to write home about, the head and the base are just mesmerizing and indeed very tantalizing. As for the weight and strength, this fragrance is an overall power bomb. It performs very, very well. You have an excellent sillage. The trail left behind the wearer is strong indeed. Projection offers a distinctive scent bubble that opens itself nicely, and the longevity, this lasts for a good portion of the day. So when you apply this, apply sparingly. You just want to offer a hint of it. You don't want to choke people out in the room, given that it does have some very strong characteristics. In terms of its seasonality, this is probably a fragrance that I would reserve for the colder months. It would be great for the early autumn, late autumn, as well as throughout the entire winter. Early spring, you could probably continue to wear it a little bit. However, when the temperatures start to really go up, I would put this away and consider using something else instead. When it comes to the third-party feedback of this fragrance, which is what other people are saying, what I've read, what I've asked when wearing this, I've asked for a couple of opinions, it's quite polarizing. Indeed, this is a 1970s fragrance that is very characteristic. It's iconic of its period. So people will say it smells a little bit dated, and they may appreciate that, and they may really detest it. So you're going to have one or the other. Indeed, some people said that it smells like something from the 1970s, and they were right. And other people were saying it was intriguing and intoxicating, despite being a little bit dated. So you do have this paradox where people really enjoy it, but they can tell it is a little bit dated. Therefore, it's not surprising that it was more popular among older people, people in their late 30s and 40s and above. They found this to be a pleasant fragrance. However, when you started asking people in their teens, in their 20s, and their early 30s, they thought, this seems too much like yesteryear. I'm not going to wear this, or I'm not going to enjoy somebody who wears this. We're now going to consider the impressions, which are our high-level usage thoughts and, how we would consider this to be best used, including the seasonality that I mentioned earlier. So first of all, in terms of age range, this is probably best suited to someone in their 40s, perhaps their 50s. However, people in their 30s could certainly wear it and enjoy it. Nevertheless, it's important that they're careful with it. They don't overuse it. They try and incorporate it subtly into their grooming regimen and don't appear too bolshy by wearing a fragrance that is very mature and very distinguished. In terms of time of day, this could probably be worn at the office. Indeed, I've identified it as a more professional office fragrance. It could be worn formally as well. However, it is best suited for the evening. Indeed, this would be a great fragrance that you could wear at a black tie event or even wear when going out to a formal dinner. However, it would be absolutely fine in the office. Yet, again, given that it's dependent on the age usage, perhaps try and wear it if you're at a certain position at work. If you're a junior, it might come across as a little bit too dominating. And indeed, this leads to the masculinity of this fragrance. So we have different degrees of this. You can see that in the link below that talks about the fragrance formula. This is El Macho, which means it's the highest possible rating. And indeed, it is one of the strongest fragrances you can get in terms of masculinity, largely due to the presence of the civet. In terms of presentation, so not only is the contents a little bit dated, but so is the bottle. As you can see, it has a classic presentation of just a glass bottle, a black top, which looks a bit like a top hat, and the silver metal stamped logo. That's about it. When it comes to the packaging itself, packaging is a little bit more contemporary. It has this intriguing geometric design on it, which look like little G's, and it has something that actually kind of reminds me of Blade Runner. You'd expect it to be somewhere in the film as a prop or even as the patterns on the walls. As for the atomizer isn't brilliant, I admit. It does water gun when used not too decisively. It is a very thick mist. Wow, that's overpowering. And it is going to really lather that onto your skin. So you probably want to use it at a safe distance and don't go over too many sprays. Otherwise, you could smell very, very strongly of this indeed. When it comes to the value, now this really depends, first of all, if you'd appreciate a classic fragrance. If you're going to take this as a blind buy, I would probably not risk it, given that its RRP is $78 for 100 milliliters. That being said, I picked up this bottle for $60 through the retailer in the link below. So you can get it at a decent price online. Still, $60 for a classic fragrance is quite expensive. In fact, it's far more expensive than some of its peers that came out actually before this. So you have Aramis and Dunhill for Men. Dunhill for Men you can pick up for about $30. This came out in the 1930s and is very similar to Gentleman. And you have Aramis, which came out in the 60s. Now this is going to be similarly priced, somewhere between $20 and $30 through the retailers in the link below. To conclude, as you can see, I'm still holding up Dunhill for Men and Aramis. These are two classic fragrances from yesteryear that are given far more attention than Gentleman. However, they're significantly harder to wear. They're very bolshy. I wouldn't call them arrogant, overbearing, or obnoxious, but they are very, very present, and they're hard to wear successfully without really choking people out around you. Meanwhile, Gentleman is going to be a little bit more refined, is somewhat more subtle, and when carefully applied is going to really give you that distinguished effect that you're looking for from a retro scent, whereas these you're going to struggle a little bit more with. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please subscribe, leave us a comment and like the video. It'd be great to hear from you, and until next time, head to bespokeunit.com and see all the other subjects that we cover, because there's a lot out there. Until next time, take care.